Welcome in to the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is week 10 of the college football season. November is right around the corner, which only means one thing. On Tuesday is the most consequential day of our lifetimes. That's right. Maction is back on Tuesday. We cannot wait for some midweek Maction. The midweek CUSA has been fine. It does not live up to Maction. Maction is one of one. Jay Walsh, I know you're very excited for some Maction coming up on Tuesday. But first, we have to get through this week upcoming, which isn't great. But how excited are you for Maction?
You know, I cannot wait. Any true college football fan is the point in the season that you look for is when midweek Maction starts, and it truly is something that's just unlike anything else in the sporting world. It's the most electric games that you could possibly imagine, the most ridiculous outcomes. It is, for a true college football sicko, it is heaven on earth.
Yeah, and Jay, I really couldn't have put it better myself. It is heaven on earth. How I know you're very excited for Maction, but how excited are you?
Well, there's going to be so many over-unders hit, a lot of unders to be hit. It's going to be amazing. This is going to be the first year that, shout out Sports Perspectives MSU, I wonder where they're going this year for their Maction trip. But it's going to be a shame that we cannot partake in, I cannot partake in a Maction trip this year. I am excited to watch, though. So nice midweek football that is not the Fun Belt or Conference USA as FIU last night. I turned it on for 2 seconds and I'm just like, I'm out. So nothing.
Yeah, like I said, it's good. The CUSA stuff, the Fun Belt stuff, it's not Maction. Maction is one of one. One day you'll have a game that's in like 60-degree weather at night. The next day it's going to be snow on the field, and it's just going to be the most absolutely disgusting game of football you've ever watched. So very excited for that. If you, the viewers, are wondering, yes, we are down to 3 people today. Matt Merrifield has decided not to grace us with his presence today. I honestly have no idea where he is. Flint Firebirds are not playing today, so he's not here. But we do indeed have a special guest joining us today, replacing Matt. That's right. It is nobody. Sorry, guys. I just couldn't get a guest on time. We had a lot of no-shows. Also, I didn't reach out to anybody. So that might be a little bit of a problem. So, Jay Walsh, we'll go to you. Let's get into these Jay Walsh rankings as we approach the final college football weekend before the college football playoff rankings come out. And those also come out on Tuesday. They're trying to top Maction, but nothing can top Maction on Tuesday.
Yes, it is the worst part of the year for the Jay Walsh rankings when the college football playoff rankings come out, because everyone decides that for some reason they take precedence. But, I could not disagree more. And so, without further ado, we'll get into the only real rankings that matter, which are the Jay Walsh college football rankings. So starting off, our top group of 5 team, keeping it the same, we are going with Boise State. Navy had an opportunity against Notre Dame, and we kind of all saw how that turned out, so we're not going to speak on that any further. The number 15 spot in these rankings was arguably the hardest one for me to pick this week. I was between 2 teams, Pitt and Boise State. I ended up going with Boise State here at the 15 spot. And number 14, I have gone with Clemson. And then coming in at number 13, we have Kansas State. Number 12, we have Tennessee coming down a couple spots. Texas, we have rolling in at number 11. Number 10, we have rising up a couple spots after a big win. We have Texas A&M. And then number 9, we have Notre Dame coming in after, as I said, that dominant win over Navy. Number 8, we have Miami. Number 7, the biggest riser of the week, we have the Indiana Hoosiers, who I couldn't justify any higher because they haven't really played any good teams yet, but they they are just a wagon right now, just absolutely steamrolling everyone. So I could not justify putting them any lower. Coming in at number 6, we have Iowa State. Number 5, we have a new Big 12 projected champion with BYU hopping in there, coming in at number 5. And then the top 4, kind of the same. We have number 4, Ohio State, number 3, Penn State, number 2, Georgia, and your number 1 team, Oregon. So that's the rankings. And in terms of the playoff matchups, we have coming in number 9 seed, we have Notre Dame playing Indiana, with the winner playing Oregon in the Rose Bowl. And then we have number 5 Penn State playing number 12 Boise State, with the winner facing Miami in the Sugar Bowl. We have number 6 Ohio State playing number 11 Texas, with the winner playing Georgia in the Peach Bowl. And then number 7 Iowa State versus number 10 Texas A&M, with the winner playing BYU in the Fiesta Bowl. Your first 4 teams left out this week were Tennessee, Kansas State, Clemson, and Pitt, as I said, was that number 16 team who I did have trouble deciding between them or Boise State for the 15th spot. So they are the number 4 first team out this week. So with that being said, I will open the floor to you guys for your thoughts.
I guess I'll start. So obviously this week you did a change with the Big 12 having BYU now the projected winner over Iowa State. Obviously it's only a 1-place flip, but kind of what went into that decision of you flipping the 2?
It's not, I don't see a whole lot of difference between these 2 teams. They've both played some decent opponents so far this year, but neither of them really have that crazy win. The thing that I look at is BYU does have the best win of the 2 of them with a 38-9 thrashing of Kansas State, which kind of looms large. And then if you look at, BYU took care of business against UCF this week. And Iowa State really kind of struggled with them, went right down to the wire the last time they played. So that's kind of what I was looking at in terms of common opponents and BYU having the better win.
I guess I'll go. I agree with most of these. I would have Clemson higher. I'm just still, I think I said this last week. I think I'm buying into Clemson right now. We'll see how they do. And they're in this week's matchup. I can't even remember who they play. I'm going to be honest with you, but Nick, you guys probably know. But I think they have a tough test coming up soon. I believe they go to Pitt in a couple weeks. So that's going to be a tough test at Acrisure Field. Other than that, I would have Clemson a little higher. Other than that, I really don't have a problem with this. I agree. BYU has to be this 3rd team right now because Iowa State, really hasn't played anybody. We're gonna see how they fare in the next couple weeks here, but I really don't have any disagreements here. Outside the other ranking, I would have Miami a little higher. I can't remember. I think you had them at like 8 or something. I would have Miami over Indiana, just because Miami has played a little bit of I know Miami's schedule is kind of weak here, but they did go to the Swamp and win. They have some decent wins. I would take Miami over Indiana right now. Other than that, I really don't have any disagreements. So,
and then I guess I'll just finish with this question, Jay Walsh. Obviously, we saw Boise State win against UNLV on Friday night. I know you said Navy was probably your next G5, and then they did what they did against Notre Dame. Is it Army now that's that next G5 team, or is there somebody else you're looking out for right now if Boise State slips up?
It really is pretty much Army at this point. And obviously, they've got the game against Notre Dame coming up where they get a chance to prove themselves. If they win that game, in my mind, they absolutely jump Boise, being an undefeated team that has a very high quality win on the schedule. But as of right now, it is Boise State. But yes, I would say Army is that next team up in those in the G5 rankings.
Well, Jay Walsh, that was another great rendition of your rankings. Obviously, next week we can see how it compares to what the committee is seeing, that great committee that has to get games put on iPads in 45-minute condensed games because apparently they can't watch full games. Couldn't be me. At least I'm dedicated to the game and watch commercials. So what can I say? I think we put up a better committee than what the college football playoff does. But that's going to stop my rambling, except to say that bring back the computers of the BCS. That's all I got to say. But if we're not going to do that, make the Jay Walsh rankings the official rankings of college football. That's all I got to say about that. Let's get into this week 10, this last week of October in this college football season. We are starting off with a huge game. It is big noon kickoff. It is Ohio State, a 3.5-point favorite, traveling to Happy Valley to face off against Penn State. The over-under is 45.5. Technically not a whiteout game. This is technically like the helmet stripe game where 98% of the stadium will be in white, but basically the 50-yard line on both sides will be in blue because that's Penn State helmet, whatever. Jay, we'll start with you. This feels like, well, it doesn't feel like this is Penn State's biggest test so far this season. With it being at home, do you think that gives them more of an advantage given that Ohio State has gone on the road in another tough game against Oregon and lost that game?
Well, I think if this game was at night, I think Ohio State is in trouble. Thanks, Fox, for ruining college football, for doing this to us. This game should be a whiteout. This should be a night game, and Fox Big New Kickoff ruins it because we can't have nice things. Anyways, this is obviously a big statement game for James Franklin. He always has these games, and I feel like he poops himself. He can't win big games. Let's be honest here. Look, Penn State's good. They had a decent win over Wisconsin. If that's you go into Madison and beat a decent Wisconsin team, I guess. But Ohio State's winning this game. Let's be honest here. Ohio State's not great. I'm concerned about them in the offensive line. They did not look great against Nebraska, but I feel like I wouldn't say they're desperate, but they need to get this win because you already lost to Oregon. This is a game Ohio State usually wins. And look, Penn State's defense is really good, but I'm not a big Penn State believer this year. They almost lost to a bad USC team. Drew Aller's shown progress, but I just think Ohio State, James Franklin cannot win a big game, and until proven otherwise, I'm taking Ohio State in this game. I might be a big Penn State hater in this spot here, but I mean, until proven otherwise, I'm taking Ohio State. I'll lay the 3.5 in this spot. I'd probably lean the under. I think both defenses are pretty good. Penn State's defense is really. I think this is gonna be a lower scoring game. I would lean the under in the spot, but I'm going to go Ohio State in the spot.
And then Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Does it worry you how much Ohio State struggled with Nebraska last week at home, and now they're traveling to another very tough environment heading to Happy Valley?
I mean, it's hard not to be a little troubled by the way that they play against Nebraska. Just simply because, I mean, for a team Ohio State is pretty much always known for big-time offense these days. To only put up 21 points against a Nebraska team that just gave up, 50 to Indiana, I feel like that's definitely a little bit concerning. I really don't love the line in this game because while I think Ohio State is the better of these two teams, realistically, Happy Valley might be the toughest place to play in college football. I mean, it's even though, like we said, it's not a whiteout because it is technically it's a noon game. That place is still going to be rocking. They're going to be going crazy. I am always of the opinion that if there is a way to lose a big game, James Franklin will find it. However, on the flip side of that, Ryan Day really hasn't shown the ability to win a whole lot of big games in his career. And while I do think he is still a better coach than James Franklin, I don't really know that you can necessarily say that you can count on either of these guys to win a big game. If I had to lean one way, I probably would lean Ohio State here. And realistically, I think the over is a decent play because both of these teams have shown the capability to score points. And while Ohio State's defense for the most part this year has been very solid, obviously they gave up 31 to a very good Oregon team that is currently ranked the number one in the country. I think Penn State's defense has been a little bit suspect at times this year. I mean, they gave up, I want to say they gave up like 30. They gave up 30 to USC, to a USC offense that really isn't crazy good. So I would lean the over here, and I would probably take Ohio State with the points, although I could easily see this being a field goal type of game.
And then I guess for me on this game, my biggest thing is, at least for the Big Ten title, this is do or die for Ohio State. If they lose this game, they're 100% done. With there being no divisions anymore, I mean, it makes it even more confusing. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I mean, with the way tiebreakers are now, there's a chance that Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon can all finish undefeated, and Oregon won't make the conference title game because of tiebreakers. It gets all crazy. So for Ohio State, this is do or die. I know both these coaches, as we've mentioned, they tend to not win the big games. Well, one of them has to win this game because football doesn't end in ties anymore. So I lean Ohio State in this game just because I feel like they're going to learn from the experience that was Eugene with Oregon. And Penn State really hasn't had that type of challenge yet. So I'm leaning Ohio State, but wouldn't be surprised if James Franklin somehow decides to win a big game in his career and walk away with a victory in this one. So we'll move on to the second game that we have here on the schedule. It is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. I don't believe they are allowed to call it that anymore because, that endorses alcohol, but we endorse it here. We endorse it here at the Merrifield Sportsbook. It is Florida, Georgia in Jacksonville. Georgia is a 16.5-point favorite. The over-under is 52.5. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you now on this one. This game, it always seems to be close unless there's like a major gulf in, talent between the two teams. Kind of feels like we might be in that kind of territory this year again, with Georgia just being so much better than Florida. Do you see Georgia covering such a large spread in a rivalry game like this?
It's always tough to pick spreads in rivalry games just because a lot of them are way closer than they should be, just simply because of the emotion, everything that kind of goes into the game. The thing that I think has been getting a little bit lost on people, and this may kind of sound weird to say, but I think it's kind of going under the radar that Florida has kind of quietly figured things out a little bit. I mean, they had a really shaky start to the season, obviously getting blown out by Miami and then losing a tough game to Texas A&M. But since then, they rattled off 3 wins in their last 4 games, with their only loss being a 6-point loss at Tennessee. I mean, they have kind of quietly gotten themselves into position. I mean, obviously, they're not really in position to do a whole lot because of their upcoming schedule, which is just absolutely brutal. But they have kind of quietly figured things out a little bit. I would not necessarily see them. I would not be surprised to see them cover this spread, seeing as, I mean, they figured things out. It's a rivalry game. I think Georgia could be in for a bit of a letdown after that absolute destruction of Texas last week. I think this is kind of a prime, or 2 weeks ago, I think this is kind of a prime candidate game for Florida to actually cover the 16.5. Because I think I could very easily see Georgia winning this game by 2 touchdowns. So if I had to pick, I would honestly pick Florida plus 16.5 here.
And then Jay, we'll go to you next. These two teams, Jay Walsh just mentioned it, obviously. Georgia coming off that big win against Texas 2 weeks ago. Florida had a big win against Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Both of them had bye weeks, so both are going to be very much rested. Do you think that plays a bigger factor, the fact that they both had bye weeks last week, or do you think that's not as much of an advantage for either side?
No, the bye weeks. I think the bye weeks are important. You get more rest. You're getting more guys back off injuries. You get another week to rest. I mean, you mentioned this earlier. Florida's usually kept this game kind of close, and Georgia. I saw this on. I saw this that Georgia is 2-6 straight up against the spread. I do take that in consideration, especially as a rivalry game, kind of all bets are off situation. Georgia just hasn't like they've showed up for big games like Texas, but like against Mississippi State, they only won that game by I think 10 or something. So laying 16.5 points with Georgia, you can't ask me to do that. So I mean, Georgia wins this game. I mean, look, they're going to own Florida for a long time now. They're going to continue to do it. I'm going to take Florida plus 16.5. That's just way too many points. And Georgia's 2-6 straight up against the spread. They don't show up for. I mean, I know this is sort of a big game for these two teams, but look, I mean, Georgia just hasn't showed up for these games, and I would probably lean Florida in this spot, but Georgia's going to continue to roll. It's kind of what they do, but look, they don't win. They're not like the dominant team that they used to be. So I would probably lean Florida in the spot. It's just you can't convince me to lay 16.5 points in a game like this. That's just way too many points. We'll see how they look off the bye. I mean, if this game was before, if this game was last week, I would definitely lean Florida because you're coming off that win against Texas. But I would still lean Florida in the spot. I just that's way too many points, like I said.
Yeah, and I don't really think there's any doubt about Georgia winning this game. It's just truly the question of by how much. I do think Florida keeps it somewhat close. Like Jay Walsh mentioned, they've quietly figured it out this year. Billy Napier's seat may not be as hot as some fans wanted it to be with the way they figured things out. Obviously, we'll see how it goes down to the end of the season. I mean, if they lose to Florida State, that seat gets hot right away, right again, because that Florida State team is just awful. But I don't think losing this game really hurts him because I don't think they're expected to win. I don't think anybody really expects Florida to win. But I do expect them to keep it close. Like I said, this game, it's weird that it's always like within a possession or two. And given that line is really above 2 possessions right now, I like Florida to at least cover here. I don't think they're going to win. I do like them to cover. But before we move on, I do want to bring this up because it just broke today as we are filming this. But for this rivalry game in 2026 or 2027 and 28, I believe are the 2 dates. This game will be moving from Jacksonville. 2027, it will be in Atlanta. 2028, it will be in Tampa Bay while they redevelop Everbank Field and make it into, whatever it's going to be next. I don't know, whatever. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you. Kind of what are your overall thoughts on this decision? Because this game has been played in Jacksonville since 1933, except for 2 years, 94 and 95. When they demolished the Gator Bowl to build what is now Everbank Field. And they did a home and home then. What are your overall thoughts on the decision on Atlanta and Tampa Bay? And what are your thoughts on them not doing a home and home here? Because it would make sense for them just to do a home and home for 2 years.
I am always a fan of home and homes. I'm usually very against neutral site games. I understand for certain rivalries it works, like Red River rivalry being played at the Cotton Bowl is just perfect. I mean, like I said, there are certain rivalries it works for. I think it does work for this one. However, given the opportunity, I think a home and home is kind of the way to go. Because I mean, you've got Athens, which is one of the best college towns in America, one of the hardest places to play, and then you've got the Swamp, which is again one of the best atmospheres in college football. So I mean, I really don't see why a home and home wasn't done here. I just think it's a little bit stupid to not do it and kind of get these more than anything, kind of get the student sections involved in this rivalry more, because obviously having it in neutral site in Tampa Bay and Atlanta, Tampa and Atlanta, it's difficult for the students to get to these games. So you're not going to have nearly as many. I think I don't love the fact that it's not a home and home here, but I do understand it a little bit. But yeah, I would have preferred a home and home.
And then Jay, same thing to you. Kind of, what are your thoughts on the two locations and them not doing a home and home for these 2 years?
It should be a home and home. Home and homes are, I mean, why put it in Atlanta? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, you might as well do the home and home, because home and homes are, I mean, I get it. Like Jay Walsh said, like for the Cotton Bowl, and then for like this rivalry, it makes sense to have a neutral site. But like, if you're not going to have it in Jacksonville, you might as well just put it in a home and home. And also, it's going to be called, are we going to call it the world's famous indoor cocktail party instead of outdoor now? That's what we're going to call it for 1 year, because Atlanta's indoors. But no, you have to make this a home and home. Like, I agree with Jay Walsh. Like, neutral site games are just stupid, and I feel like it's kind of like an NFL type atmosphere a little bit, because like you don't have the student sections. It's just like for obviously for the playoff games, that's fine, but like home game, like there should be always home games in the regular season outside of like the week one's fine. They always have like that Aflac kickoff game or whatever. Other than that, like they should always have it on college campuses, which is why I'm really excited for the why I'm really excited for this 12-team playoff, is you're going to get games on campus, like Beaver Stadium potentially hosting a playoff game. Like, sign me up.
Yeah, I just think it's so stupid to have neutral site games. I mean, the home atmospheres are what makes college football special. I mean, it really is when you boil down to it, because I mean, NFL football, obviously you've got the best players, you've got the best overall football, but the atmospheres of college football are part of what makes the game different. And I just think neutral site games just completely waters that down. So,
yeah, I think a lot of good points were brought up. I mean, I completely agree that this should be a home and home. The fact that, like I said, they did it in 94 and 95 kind of shows that, like, they're, at least back then, I know that's 30 years ago, but they're still willing to somewhat do it. Part of me does wonder if the decision to put it on, in Atlanta and Tampa was partially because, like, if they do a home and home here, like, it may never end up back in Jacksonville. Like, because if it ends up being like that successful, like, they're not going back to Jacksonville. That might play a part here. I don't know, because I remember it was like a year or two ago, like Kirby Smart said something about how, playing in Jacksonville cost them a recruiting day or something like that, because you couldn't technically bring recruits to a neutral site game. I think the NCAA amended that rule, though, so they're now allowed to, which seems like a dumb rule, but that's the NCAA for you, because they just have a lot of great rules. But this really should be a home and home. I mean, they basically did that. They're doing a game in Atlanta, which is Georgia's second home. And Tampa, I know it's not as close to Gainesville, but still, it's close enough to kind of be a Florida home game there. It will be interesting to see how that crowd breakdown is, because when they're in Jacksonville, it's a 50-50 split, just like it is at the Cotton Bowl. It's a nice 50-50 split. It's going to be interesting when they're in Atlanta. If you still have, a stadium of 50% Gator fans, or that's going to mostly be a red and black stadium, which I'm kind of expecting. We'll move on, though. We'll move back into the Big Ten. This is a 3:30 kickoff. It is the number one team in the nation, both in the AP poll and the Jay Walsh rankings. It is Oregon traveling to the Big House to face off against Michigan. Oregon is a 15.5-point favorite. The over-under is 45.5. Before I get to you, Jay, on your thoughts about this game, I will ask both of you, do either of you know the last time Oregon traveled to Michigan and what the result was?
I think they played each other in like 2007, 8, 9. I don't know the result.
I can't imagine that it was. I don't think it was in 2007 because that was the year Michigan lost to App State, and I mean that was the year that of all the college football upsets, I will go with. I want to say it was during the Rich Rod era, so I'm going to say 2009.
Well, the answer was said. One of you picked it. It wasn't really a pick, though. It was 2007. The week after they lost to Appalachian State, Oregon walked into the Big House and won 39-7. Like, if you talk about an absolute like letdown game after you just lost to Appalachian State, like that's like a huge letdown game. What a game that was. I mean, I somewhat remember bits and pieces of it. I was like 6, but I still remember bits and pieces of it. Was Dennis Dixon. I know they ran a Statue of Liberty during that game. Now, this was 9 months after Boise State originally ran it in the Fiesta Bowl with Tom Brenneman on the call for that game. There's a deep drive into left field, and that's a 4-0 ball game. But Jay, we'll get back on topic here. This is a rather large line, I guess I would say. Michigan very much struggled last week. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but they rather struggled last week. And the team that they lost to 2 weeks ago just got boat raced at Autzen, which was Illinois last week. Does this feel like it's kind of an easy cover for Oregon, or do you think it's going to be more of a challenge since it's at the Big House?
No, look, Michigan's not a very good team. I know I was talking, against them last week. Both teams are garbage, but look, Michigan's not very good. All they do is run, and Oregon's defensive line is very good, and I think they'll be able to stop them pretty handily here. So I will lean with Oregon. Oregon looks dominant right now. Dylan Gabriel's playing his amazing football. They can run the ball. They have great receivers. Their defense is what I like about them. Their linebackers are really good. They're just well-rounded, just a really good team. Yeah, I'm going to take Oregon in the spot. Michigan beat a West Coast team that was a bad USC team. I don't know. I still don't know how they won that game, but Oregon is going to come in here and I think they're going to win pretty handily here. So I will take Oregon. I would probably lean the under as well. I will probably take Oregon. There's no overthinking here. Oregon's just the much better team.
And then Jay Walsh, will go to you next. Has Michigan found their answer at quarterback in Davis Warren again? Or are we just kind of going to see what we saw last week, which was basically an alternation between the two, between him and Orji, since Jack Tuttle has decided to retire from football?
I think we are largely going to see kind of what we saw last week for the rest of the year. And I mean, with all due respect to Jack Tuttle, I'm sure he's going to be a first-round pick to LinkedIn. They're not really losing a whole lot there. So Warren, I would just like to say I did call Davis Warren being the starter last week on last week's show before it was announced, but I digress. But Warren has been the best thrower of the football of any of the 3 Michigan quarterbacks this year. His main issue is just he turned the ball over a ton to start the season, which obviously you're not looking for, but he was the only one that was in the game when Michigan kind of had any semblance of a competent passing attack, and we kind of saw that against Michigan State. I mean, he was relatively efficient on the day, didn't turn the ball over, got it to his playmakers. I mean, I do think that he is going to be kind of the one that you see largely for the rest of the year, but I still think we're going to see a decent amount of Alex Orji mixed in. As for this game, as much as I want to say that Michigan has kind of figured out what they're doing a little bit, Oregon is a different beast. I mean, they are the best team in the country right now, and it doesn't really appear to be super close. Obviously, they had the 1-point game against Ohio State, but I think if that game was played again right now, I think the result is a little bit different. I think they are rolling right now. I mean, they've won their last 2 games a combined 73-9. Granted, one of them was against Purdue, who has been absolutely awful this year, but Illinois has been a pretty competitive team for the most part this year, and they just absolutely annihilated them. So I would look for Oregon to cover in this spot with the 15.5. As for the over-under, I do think the over is a decent play here simply because I think there's a chance Oregon scores 35 to 40 by themselves here. And Michigan, I think, is capable with their newly found semi-competent offense. I think they're capable of putting up 10 to 14 points, which I think will get the job done for the over. So I would take Oregon with the spread, and I would take the over in this one.
Yeah, I don't see really any way that Michigan covers this number. Oregon they're a freight train right now. That's really what they are. Obviously, they had their stumbles at the beginning of the season. I think that actually made them better. Them almost obviously losing to an FCS Idaho team. Probably not the best way to start the season, but I think Dan Lanning has kind of used that as like, hey, like we got to get things figured out. Let's figure things out. And you kind of saw development week after week. It feels like they just keep getting better each week. I think I don't know if we're plateauing yet on how good they can be. I think there's still increments where they look better. I don't think it's any question whatsoever that they are going to cover this number. Michigan they're not good. I think, or I like Jay Walsh, what you said about the over, because Oregon may be able to put up most of that by themselves. If they can just get, 10 to 14 from Michigan, I think Oregon can cover that themselves. I'm very disappointed I won't be at this game because that would have just been a fun one to go to watch just Michigan get absolutely most likely annihilated by a very good Oregon team. Obviously, both of Matt's not here. We both pushed that Bo Nix narrative last year. Love the Oregon Ducks. Wish I was there, but shout out DCFC because I got to go work that because they're in the playoffs. So fun times with that. So we'll move on to the final game here, and it is the opposite side of last week's game. It is Michigan State side. They're going back home to East Lansing. They're facing off against Indiana. Indiana is a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under, 51.5. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you on this one. Indiana coming off a big win. It wasn't as big as the Nebraska win, but still it's a big win against Washington. You were on the national stage with College Game Day. There's very much big opportunity for a letdown there. They did what they needed to do. Michigan State, I think, maybe played one of their, if not best, games of the season last week, even though they lost. And, I mean, Indiana, they're not as much of a freight train as Oregon is, but they still look like very, very good right now. Do you think this is a prime opportunity for a letdown game for Indiana and a prime opportunity for, coming off a rivalry loss for Michigan State to find a way to win this game?
I would love to answer yes to that question, but I simply cannot. I mean, Indiana, granted, they really haven't played any good to great opponents this year, but Michigan State unfortunately doesn't really fit in that category either. And Indiana has just absolutely taken care of business against everyone else. I mean, they have been a wagon all season, just absolutely annihilating Nebraska a couple weeks ago. They put up a pretty nice scoreboard against Washington as well. I mean, they are just an absolute wagon right now. And while I do think MSU has definitely played better lately, and a lot of that falls on Aiden Childs only having one interception in the last 3 games. So I do think MSU has the capability to score and kind of keep up in this game. I don't see a way for MSU to cover the 7.5. Obviously with the health of Curtis Rourke in question still, whether or not he's going to play, I haven't seen any updates on him yet. Whether or not he's going to play is kind of up in the air as far as I'm aware. I do still think that Indiana is going to get the job done. I do think, again, the over is kind of the play here because I could see Indiana dropping, again, kind of 35-40 in this game. And I do think MSU has the capability to score. So I would take the over here at 51.5, but I can't justify picking MSU plus the 7.5 here.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Obviously, Indiana hasn't played a ton of teams, and I will give credit to our dearly departed friend, Matt, who decided not to join us today. That just made it sound like he's dead. He's not dead. He's just not here. But
I was like, what? Is he dead?
The question was...
He better be dead to miss the pod.
Yeah. The question, or whatever, he put this up. He said to me, hot take, this weekend is the toughest game Indiana has played this year. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I want to look at their schedule first. That's interesting. I mean, we can go one by one here. I don't want to I don't want to bore you guys. So they played FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington. All those teams are pretty awful. Nebraska is actually not bad. So, I mean, they throttled Nebraska. I know Nebraska's offense is incredibly boring to watch, but they put 56 points up against a good Nebraska defense. That's the only that I would say, that's pretty impressive, I would say. So, look, Nebraska almost beat Ohio State. Who knows what they are, but Nebraska's not very good, but so Michigan State's not very good either. I don't know. That's tough. I'd probably say probably. Yeah, that's tough though. I mean, we can debate Nebraska or MSC. I don't know, but in terms of this game, I would agree with Jay Walsh. Indiana 7-1 against the spread this year. They just roll teams, and I mean, Michigan State played. They played well enough to win that game against Michigan. They just shot themselves in the foot. I still can't get over that. They went on that drive, and then Jonathan Kim misses that chip shot field goal. You can't do that. It just can't happen. So unless Michigan State stops shooting themselves in the foot, they can compete with Indiana, but I just don't see that happening. Indiana is just too dominant right now. And Jay Walsh, Curtis Rourke is expected to play this weekend. I looked on X. It looks like he is going to play. So Curtis Rourke, the Maple Leaf Missile, he's really good. One of the best quarterbacks in the portal. That went to Indiana from James Madison. He's really good. So I'd probably lean Indiana in the spot and also lead me over. So
yeah, I mean, you know what they say. They say throw out the record books when they meet for the Old Brass Spittoon. They don't say that, but I want Michigan State to find a way this weekend. I don't think they do. Indiana is just that much better of a team. I think it's going to be a real struggle for MSU this weekend, even though it's at home. I think it's a terrible decision to break out the all black uniforms for a 3:30 game. That's a Peacock exclusive. That is certainly some decision making by Jonathan Smith there. Also, like, I just hate the black uniforms in general. So, like, I would have been fine never seeing them again after that 49-0 loss to Michigan last year. But I like I said, I want Michigan State to find a way in this game. That line is honestly too small for me to take that. I like Indiana minus the 7.5. I think they win this game by double digits. It may not be like 20 double digits, but more like around 10. I think Indiana finds a way to cover this one. So we will move on. Well, we have no games left on the week 10 chart to talk about. So we will get into the committee picks. And I mentioned to both of you, like, there has been very little prep done before this show today. So, like, I don't even have like our standings done. Just, it was a very busy day today. So the graphic that will be added in here in editing will be correct. But right now, we're just taking a guess here. I'm pretty sure I'm still in first place. I'm pretty sure a 2-3 week from me last week did not throw me out of first place. Matt, I'm sure, is still in second place. I don't know. It's between you two for third and fourth. You guys keep changing every week. So I'm just taking a random guess and saying, Jay, you're in third place.
Okay, so I'm 24 and 4. I'm 24 and 28. So Jay Walsh, what are you?
You got me by a game. I'm 23 and 27.
Excellent.
Okay, so Jay, you are technically ahead here, I think. I don't know. I'm not doing the math right now. So Jay, we'll just go with your ahead. So let's get into these parlays. I'll go first, and then I will read off Matt, since he just decided to send it and not show up. Again, Matt, you're somewhere. It's fine. Whatever. Don't make time for us. That's fine. Your own show with your own name, and don't make time for us.
Disgusting.
By the way, I would just like to say I did just do the math real quick. JDC is technically ahead of me. He is at 47.7% winning percentage, and I am at 46. Both of us need to step it up a little bit, get that number above the 50% mark. But as of right now, he is a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah, Matt sits at 29 and 28, so he's barely above that 50% mark. Again, I didn't even do mine yet. So I know it's not below 50.
Yeah,
I
so
know that
you're
for fact.
just dominating, because your record's like, what is it? It's probably going to be like 28 and 19 now. 20. It's got to be something high.
I'll pull it up right now. I would be 28 and 21. So, I mean, it's not awful. I mean, it's better than the rest of you. So, it is.
We need to start hitting some parlays, though.
Yeah, we very much do. Hopefully this is the week, and hopefully it is mine hitting again, so I can extend that lead at the top. Let's get into my parlay. Illinois is at home, and they are 2.5-point underdog against Minnesota. I don't know why that is. Give me Illinois plus the 2.5. I think it's a nice bounce back game for them after their just demolition against Oregon last week. Speaking of Oregon, I like Oregon minus 15.5. This Michigan team's not good. We got into that. I like Oregon minus 15.5. Honestly, if it was at 20, I'd probably take it, but it is what it is. Navy, America's somewhat team after their, just absolutely bad loss last week. Very bad loss against Notre Dame last week. They bounced back in Houston against Rice, a team that fired their coach this week. Give me Navy minus 10.5. Colorado State is a 1.5-point favorite against Nevada. Nevada is not great. I believe it was last week they lost on the island. It could have been 2 weeks ago. I don't know. If it was last week, that's a lot of time change within a week. It's still give me Colorado State minus the 1.5. And SMU minus 7.5 at home against Pitt. I like that number. You never know. Gerald J. Ford Stadium at night in Dallas can get crazy. So give me SMU minus the 7.5. So that is it for my parlay. I will get into Matt's parlay here. And it does look a little familiar to me, at least the bottom three. He's got 6 picks this week. First one is Duke plus 21 at Miami. The second one is Minnesota minus 3 against Illinois. Then you have North Carolina minus 2.5 again, or at Florida State, I should say. Then he has Oregon minus 14.5 at Michigan, Navy minus 11 at Rice, and SMU minus 7 versus Pitt. So there's little bit of interesting things going on there. As I believe Matt said his lock was Navy. I don't think I mentioned it. My lock was Oregon. So Jay DeCoster, we will go to you since Jay Walsh did the math and you are in third place.
Yep. Well, hopefully we can hit a parlay. That'd be pretty nice for a change. Yeah, we'll see, honestly. So I got a nice 5-pack of picks here. We're gonna start with, you know who it is. It is Army, America's team. Literally America's team. They are minus 21.5 versus a god-awful Air Force team. I will gladly lay the 21.5 with Army. They are 7-0 on the season for the spread. I will gladly lay that number. I mean, they're just dominant. I mean, Air Force is god-awful, and that's also my lock. We're going to go to Buffalo at Akron. We're going to get a little wild here this week. We're going Buffalo minus 1.5 at Akron. Buffalo's a decent, I mean, they're not great. They're a 4-4 team, but Akron's not very good. I like the minus 1.5 there in Akron, Ohio. Great city of Akron, Ohio. We're gonna go to UNC at Florida State. Florida State, horrendous team. UNC, not bad, but I like the minus. I like laying the 2.5 with UNC there. I think that's a pretty good number against a god awful Florida State team. We're going to Fresno State. We're going late night here. We're going Fresno State versus Hawaii, minus 13.5. This is at Fresno State. Fresno State's laying 13.5. I like the Bulldogs in this spot against a not very good Hawaii team, so I'll gladly lay 2 touchdowns in that spot. And then we're also going to Vanderbilt at Auburn in the Plains. I have no idea how Vanderbilt's a 7.5-point dog in this game. How? They lost to Texas by 3, and Auburn is not very good. So I will gladly take the plus 7.5 with Vandy in the Plains. It's a tough place to play, but I mean, Diego Pavia is him. So I will gladly take the Commodores plus the 7.5. I think that's pretty easy there. So give me Vandy plus the 7.5. Those are my picks. You know, we'll see. But I think the lock can hit. It can also hit this week because all Army does is cover. So
Army is a covering machine. And I mean, there's nothing stopping them right now, unless Jay Walsh has something to say about it. That may be tipping off a little bit of one of his picks this week. But Jay Walsh, I will let you officially say the words.
Yes. And I would just like to say to any of our numerous viewers here, we may be getting into the territory of just fading my lock of the week every week because for some reason it just seems to hate me. So hopefully we can buck the trend here. But if you're an intelligent bettor, you may want to consider your strategy. So without further ado, I will get into it. And as Nick Burt kind of tipped off, my first pick is going to be rolling with the Army minus 21.5 versus the Air Force. It is not my lock of the week, so I'm not quite cursing them all the way, but we'll see. We'll see if the U.S. military can continue their top role against another branch of the military here. Simply because, I mean, A, Army's been a covering machine this year, and B, I said it last week, Air Force is really, really bad. So not really a whole lot else needs to be said there. My next pick, I am also heading – JDC and I had a lot of similar picks this week. I'm also heading over to Vanderbilt Auburn. I considered taking Vanderbilt minus the 7 or plus the 7 here. I feel like this game has trap written all over it. I don't love the line. Where I'm going is I am going over 48.5 here, because obviously with Diego Pavia has kind of been the story of Vanderbilt this year. They've proven the ability to put up points on offense, but their defense really hasn't been very good. They've given up a good amount of points this year, and even though Auburn's offense is not great, led by Michigan State legend and single-season touchdown record holder Peyton Thorne, I still think the over in this game is possible, of that over 48.5. So I am going with the over here. My next pick, again, rolling with JDC, I am going with North Carolina -2.5 at Florida State. This Florida State team is not very good. And the thing I look at is North Carolina they have a solid offense, and Florida State's defense cannot stop a nosebleed. So I'm rolling with North Carolina in this game. My next pick, and it is my lock of the week. Let's put up some prayers, go light some candles or whatever. I am rolling with Texas A&M -2.5 at South Carolina. Texas A&M has really figured it out. I mean, they had their opening season loss against Notre Dame, and since then they have just been rolling. Obviously, they're coming off the big win over LSU this past week. This could be looked at as kind of a trap game for them coming off that win, but I don't think so. South Carolina has kind of been definition mid this year. And I'm rolling with the Aggies here. Hopefully I can get back in the win column for the lock of the week. And then my last pick, I am rolling with TCU Baylor over 64.5. And I went with a TCU over last week, and it was very kind to me, hit pretty early in the fourth quarter. TCU and Baylor are two of the top 5 offenses in the Big 12, and they are two of the bottom 7 defenses. This is a pretty easy over to me. I look at this game as kind of a who scores last kind of game. So I'm taking the over 64.5 here. So that is my parlay. Hopefully we can, get back into the positive, and hopefully, God, I just need my lock of the week to hit so you guys can stop cooking me in the group chat. So those are the picks this week.
Okay. I don't want to, I have no reason to talk, you know what, but I mean, Williams-Brice Stadium at night, top 10 matchup. I mean, you couldn't have picked another game.
Rolling with the Aggies. They've got it figured out. I'm rolling with the Aggies.
I know they're not very good, but like Williams-Brice Stadium is electric at night. And you saw what happened to Tennessee a couple years ago. They got steamrolled by South Carolina.
We shall see.
Williams-Brice at night with the Bonham Trophy on the line. Like, I mean, come on. You couldn't pick any other game.
That's right. How could I forget that this is such a storied rivalry? I mean, just the history between these two teams is just unreal.
It really is. I don't know how you couldn't pick a bigger rivalry game this week, because this is the biggest one of them all. But yeah, I'm hoping for you, Jay Walsh, that Texas A&M covers this game, because if they lose possession of the Bonham Trophy, I mean, it may be over for you, at least for locks. Because I don't think there's any coming back from that one. I know there could be much worse, but still. Do you guys have anything else you would like to say about this week 10 before we wrap it up here?
Well, I'm disappointed you're not going to the big house since you're wearing that beautiful Oregon Ducks jersey, but shout out DC United in the playoffs. That's more important, obviously.
No, DC United is the MLS team in Washington.
I'm sorry, what was it again?
Detroit City FC.
Detroit City FC, yes. DC.
Yes, DCFC.
DC.
Shout out them.
Hey, shout out the boys. Good for them for getting into the playoffs, I guess.
Exactly. First home playoff game in history of the club even though in this league, I should say, they've had other playoffs in other leagues, but first home playoff game in the USL Championship, pretty big deal. 7 p.m. First kick, if you want to call it that, whatever, it's kickoff. I don't know. More importantly, I believe it's 6:30 p.m. on Saturday night. It's the Western Conference semifinals between the BC Lions and Saskatchewan Roughriders. That I'm so nervous for that one. That's not going to be fun. It's really not. Yeah.
I know that I am certainly looking forward to getting everyone to wake up for that all important Rough Riders report following the game. So I for one cannot wait.
Well, I hope you're prepared just in case it's the last one of the season. Like, there's a good chance. I know we'll still have a State of the Rough Riders coming when you can wake people up for that. You can call it a Riders report. I don't care. But I mean, it's kind of scary this weekend. Even though we're at home, it's a little scary. So a lot of playoffs happening, not in college football this weekend, though. So that is going to wrap it up for this week 10 preview of the college football season here on the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Jay Walsh. Thank you, Jay, for joining. Matt, I guess we'll see you next week, maybe. Let's see if you decide to.
Because he was confirmed dead on the show.
Better be sick, dead, or mute.
Yeah, he's all of the above probably right now. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across the Nick Bird Sports Network or the Merrifield Sportsbook Show, make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe so you see all the episodes. We're going to take you up through the college football playoff to the national championship. Who knows what happens after that? I know it's college basketball season. We may get into that. Who knows? By the time you're seeing this on Friday, the newest top of the perch will be 2 days old as Tottenham beat Man City today 2-1 in the Carabao Cup. So shout out the Coys. I know Jay loves the Coys. He loves the Coys. Jay Walsh, not so much. He may dominate the Coys at St. James Park with Newcastle, but he doesn't want this smoke. He really doesn't.
I guess we'll find out. Guess we'll have to have a little segment of the show after that game.
It would be a real shame if we did. Real shame. Sad. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week for week 11 preview here on the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.